Okay, now we are going to use some of the database management principles you've learned about in the mini lecture material to actually make map and to use the data that we have been creating. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of different examples of things that can be done, and I'm going to leave it to you really to experiment and figure out some cool things to do. So the first thing I do ask you to do though is do a buffer, and you need line data for that. And I failed to bring line data in last time. So I brought in the municipality's trail data, and then after that I clipped it. So I'm going to turn that off and produced clip data right here. So this is the trail data that is clipped to the extent of that clipper that I used before when I was doing other things with these data. So next thing to do is to add a buffer, and what a buffer is going to do is create a polygon. So if I go up here to analysis, I can click tools, or I can go right to the hot button and hit buffer. And for the input features, I'm going to include those clip trails, and I'm going to choose meters as the units of linear distance that I'm going to use, and I'm going to create a buffer of, let's say, 25 meters and run that. And you'll see that it's going to create a polygon now that surrounds each of these lines by 25 meters. If I turn those trails off, you'll see that they're independent, and I can export this if I wanted to as a shapefile. So I've done that. We'll come back and we'll use that buffer in a little bit. The next thing I want to do is sort of show you the relationship between symbolizing and selecting attribute data as well. And I will do that using this campus regions that we created before. So let me turn some of these other layers off for the time being and just keep the campus regions on. The first thing I'm going to do is just show you a basic symbolization that you can do on attributes. So let's go to symbology. And right now we're using single symbol, but I'm going to use unique values. And instead of having the field be the shape or the length, I'm going to put it on that color. Remember, I joined color to it. One was called gold and one was called green. Obviously, those colors are inappropriate for that. So if I want to, I can go and change the colors to a golden color for gold. And if I go back, I can change the green one, the green color to a green. And then we have a sort of gaudy green and gold map. I can always remove these two. Remember, I've used attributes to do that mapping. But I'm going to go back to a single symbol. And for that single symbol, I'm going to go back to no color in the middle and then just this sort of aquamarine around it. Make that a little bit bigger and apply that, and it should work. But let's say for some reason I wanted just to map the greens as opposed to the golds. What would I do? Well, to do this, I would go to selecting by attributes instead. So let me click the select attributes. You're going to make a new selection and you're going to create an expression. And I'm doing it on the campus region here, and I'm doing it where the color is equal to green. I am going to select. So I say apply, and what you'll see happens is that the green ones have now all been selected. And while they are selected, what I can do is I can right click on campus regions and I can do an export feature. Campus regions, I'm going to call it green regions. And I'm going to say OK. Now this is going to pop us as a new feature class over here. So watch what happens. First, let me clear the selection. And now let me turn off the general campus regions. And you'll see only the green ones now are highlighted. Now I could do something with those data if I so chose to do that. So that's how you select by attributes and create new feature classes. And I would recommend that you do some of that. Another thing that you can do is you can select by location, and this can get really complicated. There are all sorts of different things you can do. Let me turn off the green regions. And this time around, I'm going to choose the clip trails and the tree data and the buffers, just so that we can see everything there. And let's say that I wanted to find out which trees were relatively close to established trails. What I could do is I could say select by location, and I could say any of the trees, so go to tree data, that are within, or I could even say completely within, or even within a distance or something like that, the buffers should be selected. So trail clip buffer, there we go. I think I got it right. And what you'll see has happened here is that those trees that are close to the buffers have now been selected. And I could export that as a separate feature class if I wanted to. This would be something that would be much more difficult to symbolize without creating a new feature class for. There are lots of other things that one can do here under select by location, and we've talked a little bit about them. For example, we could, if you've got a bunch of line data, look for intersecting line in places where different features intersect. Or we could look for a place where maybe the green regions intersect the trails. There are just so many different iterations and combinations here. And then you can create new feature classes if you want to and give them new symbols. And so what I want you to do is I want you to experiment with some of these different types of selections by attributes and also selections by locations as well. Create a couple of new feature classes as well and find some sort of intelligent way that you would like to map these data and symbolize these data in maybe more than one map too. And I leave it to you to play around with this. And of course, I can answer any questions you might have about how to do some of these different analyses and selection tools.